Forward. The foreword to The Fellowship of the Ring offers insight into J.R.R. Tolkien's intentions and the context in which the story was written. Tolkien explains that the tale was not an allegory, but a work rooted in his imagination and the mythology he had been developing for years. He reflects on how the story grew beyond its original scope, evolving from a sequel to The Hobbit into a much larger and more complex narrative. Tolkien also acknowledges the challenges of writing the book, which spanned over a decade, interrupted by the events of World War II and other personal responsibilities. Tolkien emphasizes the idea of subcreation, or the crafting of a secondary world with its own history, languages, and cultures, which he believed was essential to the depth and authenticity of fantasy. He notes that his aim was not to impart moral lessons, but to create an immersive story that readers could experience on their own terms. The foreword also addresses reader interpretations and criticisms, including concerns about the pacing of the narrative and the use of archaic language. Tolkien defends these choices, stating that they were necessary to convey the grandeur and timelessness of Middle-earth. He concludes the foreword by expressing gratitude to his readers, acknowledging the enduring popularity of the story, and humbly recognizing that it has taken on a life of its own, transcending his original intentions. Tolkien's words set the stage for the epic tale to come, inviting readers into a richly imagined world full of heroism, loss, and hope. Prologue concerning hobbits and other matters. The prologue introduces readers to the world of Middle-earth by providing essential background on hobbits, the unassuming protagonists of the story. Hobbits are described as a small, peace-loving people who dwell in the Shire, a quiet and fertile region far removed from the troubles of the wider world. They enjoy simple pleasures like farming, eating, and celebrating, and they avoid adventures or anything that disrupts their tranquil way of life. Tolkien paints a vivid picture of Hobbit culture, detailing their customs, physical characteristics, and history, while emphasizing their resilience and hidden courage. The prologue also delves into the events of The Hobbit and the discovery of the One Ring by Bilbo Baggins during his adventure with the company of dwarves. It recounts how Bilbo came upon the ring in Gollum's lair, unknowingly taking possession of an artifact of immense power and dark history. The prologue highlights the significance of the ring's ability to render its wearer invisible, and hints at its corrupting influence, which will play a central role in the story. Tolkien provides additional context about the Shire's history and its isolation from the larger conflicts of Middle-earth, explaining how the Hobbit's simple existence has been preserved for centuries. He also introduces some of the notable Hobbit families, including the Bagginses, Tooks, and Brandybucks, establishing the roots of the story's main characters. Finally, the prologue sets the stage for the larger narrative, hinting at the growing shadow in the world and the pivotal role that hobbits, despite their small stature and quiet lives, will play in the fight against evil. Chapter 1. A long-expected party. The Shire is alive with excitement as Bilbo Baggins prepares for his 11th birthday party, an event that quickly becomes the most elaborate and talked about celebration in Hobbit history. Invitations are sent far and wide, with special care taken to ensure that nearly every Hobbit of note is included. The Baggins wealth, a source of endless speculation, becomes a central topic of conversation, as curious Hobbits wonder how Bilbo managed to afford such grandeur. Frodo Baggins, Bilbo's heir, is also celebrating his coming of age, though his birthday is overshadowed by Bilbo's larger-than-life plans. Gandalfthegrey, an enigmatic wizard with a reputation for spectacular fireworks, arrives to add a touch of magic and mystery to the proceedings. The party itself is an unparalleled success, featuring an abundance of food, drink, and entertainment that surpasses even the most extravagant Hobbit gatherings. Gandalf's fireworks leave the guests in awe, with vibrant displays lighting up the night sky and setting the tone for an unforgettable evening. Bilbo mingles with his guests, his demeanor charming yet distant, as though he carries a secret he cannot wait to share. As the party reaches its peak, Bilbo takes the stage to give a speech. After toasting his guests with humor and warmth, he stuns the crowd by announcing his intention to leave the Shire for good. Before anyone can react, he vanishes into thin air, using a mysterious ring to disappear from sight. Away from the astonished partygoers, Bilbo returns to Bag End, where Gandalf is waiting for him. The conversation reveals the true nature of Bilbo's departure. He intends to leave not just the Shire, but also the powerful ring he has carried since his adventure many years ago. Gandalf's growing concern about the ring's influence becomes evident as he urges Bilbo to leave it behind. Bilbo, initially reluctant, shows a disturbing attachment to the ring, even calling it precious. However, Gandalf's firm guidance and Bilbo's own realization of the need to let go prevail. In a moment of inner struggle, Bilbo places the ring in an envelope and sets it on the mantelpiece. Relieved but emotionally drained, he leaves the Shire, entrusting his home and belongings to Frodo. Frodo returned to Bag End later that night, finding it eerily quiet and now his to care for. Gandalf warns him about the dangers of the ring, instructing him to keep it safe and to never use it under any circumstances. Though Frodo does not yet understand the gravity of the situation, he agrees to follow Gandalf's advice. Gandalf departs, promising to return once he has uncovered the truth about the ring. As Bilbo journeys toward Rivendell, Frodo begins a new chapter in his life, unaware of the immense responsibility and danger that the simple gold ring will bring. This moment, quiet and unassuming, marks the beginning of an epic tale that will shape the fate of Middle-earth. Chapter 2: The Shadow of the Past. Years pass peacefully in the Shire, and Frodo settles into life at Bag End, maintaining a quiet existence much like Bilbo's before him. However, rumors and strange occurrences begin to filter into the Shire from the wider world. Stories of dark powers rising in the east and mysterious travelers on the roads reach even the secluded hobbits. Frodo hears of black riders and whisperings about an ancient evil returning, though he pays them little mind. On August 2nd, 1921, on the way, Gandalf, meanwhile, has been absent for long stretches, and Frodo begins to wonder about the wizard's warnings regarding the ring left in his care. Though he rarely thinks of it, the ring seems to linger in his mind in peculiar ways, subtly influencing his thoughts. Gandalf suddenly returns to Bag End after a long absence, appearing more grave and serious than Frodo has ever seen him. He sits Frodo down for a long and unsettling conversation about the ring's true nature. Gandalf reveals that it is not just a simple magical trinket, but the One Ring forged by the Dark Lord Sauron thousands of years ago to dominate all life. Gandalf explains the history of the ring, its connection to the other rings of power, and how it was lost and eventually found by Gollum before coming into Bilbo's possession. As Gandalf speaks, Frodo begins to grasp the enormity of the situation and the peril the ring represents, not just to him, but to all of Middle-earth. Gandalf recounts his efforts to confirm the ring's identity, including the discovery of old manuscripts that reveal the inscription on the ring. He demonstrates this to Frodo by throwing the ring into the fire, causing fiery elvish script to appear on its surface. The inscription reads, "One ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all, and in the darkness bind them." Frodo is horrified to learn that the ring is the key to Sauron's power and that the Dark Lord is actively searching for it. Gandalf emphasizes the danger, explaining that Sauron's servants, the Ringwraiths, are already hunting for the Shire and the Baggins. Who possesses the ring? Frodo is overwhelmed by fear and despair, realizing that the ring cannot remain hidden in the Shire. He suggests that Gandalf take the ring, but the wizard adamantly refuses, explaining that its corrupting power would consume him and twist his intentions. Instead, Frodo must leave the Shire and take the ring far away to keep it from falling into Sauron's hands. Though terrified, Frodo reluctantly agrees, knowing the fate of the world depends on his actions. Gandalf advises secrecy and begins to make plans for Frodo's departure. Samwise Gamgee, Frodo's loyal gardener, accidentally overhears the conversation, but instead of being punished, he's enlisted by Gandalf to accompany Frodo on his journey. Chapter 3: Three is Company. Frodo begins preparations to leave the Shire, following Gandalf's advice to keep his plans secret. To maintain appearances, he decides to sell Bag End to the Sackville Bagginses, distant relatives who have long coveted the property. Frodo announces that he plans to move to a small house in Buckland near the Brandywine River, an excuse to mask his true intentions of leaving the Shire altogether. As the day of departure approaches, Gandalf suddenly leaves, promising to return before Frodo sets out. However, days turn into weeks and there is no sign of the wizard. Frodo grows increasingly anxious, especially with the growing rumors of black riders and shadowy figures near the Shire's borders. On the day of his departure, Frodo sets off with his loyal friends Samwise Gamgee and Pippin Took. To avoid drawing attention, they decide to travel on foot, avoiding main roads and busy routes. Frodo feels a mix of excitement and trepidation, knowing that he is leaving the only home he has ever known. As the group ventures into the countryside, they share lighthearted banter, but the weight of their mission looms silently over them. Frodo, in particular, struggles with the knowledge of the ring's power and the danger it brings to those around him. Despite the camaraderie of his friends, Frodo feels a growing sense of isolation as the burden of the ring begins to weigh on him. Their journey takes a darker turn when they encounter their first Black Rider. Frodo senses the presence of evil before they see it, feeling an unnatural fear that causes him to clutch the ring instinctively. The rider, cloaked in black and mounted on a shadowy horse, seems to sniff the air, searching for something. Frodo is tempted to put on the ring, but the voice of reason, perhaps Gandalf's advice echoing in his mind, stops him. Sam and Pippin, though frightened, help Frodo hide until the rider moves on. This encounter solidifies the reality of their danger, leaving Frodo shaken and determined to keep moving. As night falls, the group decides to take shelter in the woods, hoping to stay out of sight. Frodo reflects on the enormity of his task, the sacrifices he must make to protect the Shire. Despite his fear, he feels a renewed sense of purpose, bolstered by the loyalty of Sam Pippin. Along the way, they meet Gildor and Glorion, an elf traveling with his kin. Gildor offers them food, shelter, and guidance, warning them of the Black Riders and the growing shadow in Middle-earth. Frodo is comforted by the elves' presence, but is reminded of the urgency of his journey. Galdor's parting words encourage Frodo to remain steadfast, even in the face of overwhelming darkness. Chapter 4. A Shortcut to Mushrooms. The morning after their encounter with Gildor and the elves, Frodo, Sam, and Pippin set out again, now more alert to the dangers lurking on the road. Gildor's warnings about the Black Riders linger heavily in their minds, and they take extra care to avoid being seen. Frodo begins to feel the gravity of his quest pressing harder upon him, realizing that the carefree days of his life in the Shire are now behind him. The group decides to leave the main road and take a shortcut through the countryside, hoping to avoid any further encounters with the mysterious riders. Their path leads them into unfamiliar territory, and the journey becomes more difficult than anticipated. Frodo, though anxious to press forward, is frustrated by their slow progress. Sam and Pippin, ever loyal and upbeat, do their best to lift Frodo's spirits. Along the way, they encounter a patch of thick underbrush, which forces them to slow down even more. As they navigate the challenging terrain, Frodo feels an increasing sense of unease, as if they are being watched. This feeling proves true when they once again hear the eerie sound of hoofbeats behind them. The group scrambles to hide as another Black Rider approaches. Frodo is overcome by a near irresistible urge to put on the ring, feeling his strange pull growing stronger in moments of danger. However, he resists, recalling Gandalf's warnings about its corrupting influence. The rider lingers for a tense moment, sniffing the air and exuding an aura of menace, before moving on. Shaken but unharmed, the group decides to move quickly and avoid resting until they are farther from the road. Surrounded on the side, it hisses and lingers. Flacids always rose and at allotted night. Footnote: the experience solidifies their awareness of the peril they face and reinforces Frodo's resolve to stay hidden. Eventually, they come across the farm of Farmer Maggot, a well-known figure in the area who has a history with Frodo. When Frodo was a young hobbit, he often trespassed on Maggot's land to steal mushrooms, which led to several frightening encounters with the farmer's dogs. Frodo is initially reluctant to approach the farm, fearing that Maggot might remember him as a troublemaker. However, Maggot surprises him with a warm welcome and offers the group food and a safe place to rest. Maggot also shares troubling news. He has seen a Black Rider, asking questions about a Baggins, and seems deeply disturbed by the encounter. With this new information, the group's sense of urgency is heightened, and they prepare to press on toward Buckland under the cover of night, with Maggot offering them a final gift of mushrooms to sustain them on their journey. Chapter 5. A Conspiracy Unmasked. The trio reaches Buckland and arrives at Frodo's new home in Crickhollow, a small house he has arranged to use as a cover for his departure from the Shire. Frodo plans to make it appear as though he is simply relocating, not leaving on a dangerous journey. As they settle in, Frodo reflects on how drastically his life has changed in just a few days. Sam and Pippin do their best to comfort him, but Frodo remains weighed down by the knowledge of the ring's power and the dark forces pursuing it. The atmosphere in Crickhollow is tense, with the memory of the Black Riders fresh in their minds, but Frodo is determined to keep his companions from worrying too much. That evening, Merry Brandybuck joins the group, bringing his usual cheer and resourcefulness. Frodo is pleased to see Merry, but is also nervous about revealing the true purpose of his journey. After dinner, the group gathers in the sitting room, where Frodo plans to explain his decision to leave the Shire. Before he can speak, however, Merry and Pippin shock him by revealing that they already know about the ring and his planned departure. Frodo is taken aback, but Merry explains that he and Pippin had suspected for some time that Frodo was planning something significant. They had noticed Gandalf's visits and Frodo's unusual behavior in recent months. Merry goes on to reveal that he has been quietly observing Frodo and even eavesdropping on conversations. Through this, he pieced together the importance of the ring, though he admits he does not know its full story. Pippin and Sam confirm that they, too, are aware of Frodo's burden and have no intention of letting him face it alone. Frodo, initially upset by their interference, his friend's determination to stand by him bolsters his resolve, and he begins to feel less alone in his mission. The bond between the hobbits strengthens as they pledge to protect each other, no matter the dangers ahead. That night, the group finalizes their plans to leave Crickhollow and begin their journey beyond the Shire. Merry suggests using a hidden path through the Old Forest, a dangerous and mysterious area on the Shire's eastern border. Frodo is reluctant, knowing the Old Forest's reputation for being wild and enchanted, but Merry assures him that it is the safest route to avoid the Black Riders. As they prepare to leave, Frodo feels a mixture of fear and determination. The support of his friends gives him hope, even as the shadow of the ring continues to weigh heavily on his mind. The chapter ends with the hobbits setting out before dawn, their hearts heavy with the knowledge that they are leaving the safety of the Shire behind for an uncertain and perilous future. Chapter 6. The Old Forest. The hobbits begin their journey into the Old Forest early in the morning, guided by Merry, who is familiar with the area. The forest has an eerie and oppressive atmosphere, with dense, ancient trees that seem to watch them as they pass. The air feels heavy, and the hobbits sense an almost tangible malice emanating from their surroundings. Frodo recalls the frightening stories he heard about the forest as a child, including tales of trees that could move and trap travelers. Merry assures them that while the forest is dangerous, they can navigate it safely if they stay alert and follow the path he has planned. As they venture deeper, the path becomes harder to follow. The forest seems to resist their progress, with branches and undergrowth blocking their way and an unnatural silence surrounding them. The hobbits feel as though the forest itself is alive and actively working against them. Frodo becomes increasingly uneasy as the oppressive atmosphere weighs on him and he begins to feel the ring's presence more strongly. And Sam, ever practical, tries to keep the group moving, while Pippin grows frustrated with the slow and difficult journey. Merry remains calm, using his knowledge of the forest to keep them from straying too far off course. Their situation takes a dire turn when they become lost, as the shifting trees and narrowing path lead them away from Merry's planned route. They find themselves near a deep, dark area of the forest known as the Withywindle Valley, a place Merry had hoped to avoid. The hobbits feel a strange lethargy and find themselves drawn toward a large willow tree by the riverbank. Exhausted and disoriented, Frodo and Pippin sit against the tree's massive trunk, while Sam remains alert. Suddenly, the tree attacks, capturing Pippin and Merry in its roots and nearly pulling Frodo into the river. Sam panics, unsure how to help, as the willow seems too powerful to fight. In their moment of despair, they are saved by the sudden arrival of a strange figure. Tom Bombadil. He appears as a cheerful, enigmatic man with bright blue eyes and a powerful, commanding presence. Singing a nonsensical yet oddly compelling song, Tom commands the willow to release the hobbits, and the tree obeys. Merry and Pippin are freed, and the group is astonished by Tom's effortless control over the forest. Introducing himself as Tom Bombadil, he invites them to his house for safety and rest. Though bewildered by Tom's peculiar nature, the hobbits gratefully follow him, leaving the dangers of the old forest behind for the moment. Chapter 7. In the House of Tom Bombadil. The hobbits follow Tom Bombadil through the old forest, still unnerved by their encounter with Old Man Willow, but reassured by Tom's cheerful demeanor and apparent mastery over their surroundings. Tom leads them through winding paths with an ease that contrasts sharply with the hobbit's earlier struggles in the forest. As they walk, Tom sings strange songs about the forest, the rivers, and the hills, his voice filled with joy and a deep connection to the natural world. Frodo and his companions are struck by his enigmatic presence, sensing that Tom is more than he appears. The oppressive weight of the forest begins to lift as they near his house. Tom's home is a warm and welcoming refuge, nestled in a clearing that feels untouched by the darkness of the old forest. The hobbits are greeted by Goldberry, Tom's wife, whose radiant beauty and calm presence immediately enchant them. She introduces herself as the River Daughter, a being seemingly tied to the water and natural world. Her serene demeanor and melodic voice create an atmosphere of peace that soothes the hobbits' frayed nerves. As they settle in, they are treated to a feast of simple but delicious food, and their worries momentarily fade in the comfort of Tom and Goldberry's hospitality. During their stay, the hobbits learn more about Tom Bombadil, though his true nature remains a mystery. Tom speaks of ancient times in the history of Middle-earth, revealing that he is older than the forest itself. He seems to exist outside the concerns of the world, untouched by the struggles of men, elves, or even the dark power of Sauron. Frodo is particularly intrigued by Tom's detachment, and during a private moment he tests the power of the ring by handing it to Tom. To Frodo's amazement, Tom treats the ring as if it is nothing more than a trinket, slipping it on his finger without disappearing and returning it to Frodo without hesitation. This display both reassures and unsettles Frodo, who realizes the ring has no power over Tom. The hobbits spend a restful night in Tom's house, free from fear for the first time since leaving the Shire. Tom entertains them with stories and songs, weaving tales of the land's history and the spirits that inhabit it. Despite the safety of Tom's home, Frodo remains mindful of the dangers that lie ahead. When the time comes to leave, Tom gives them advice for navigating the Barrow Downs, the treacherous hills they must cross to continue their journey. Though he also gives them a parting gift, a song of summoning, Tom instructs them to sing it if they ever find themselves in danger, promising that he will come to their aid. Though reluctant to leave the sanctuary of Tom's house, the hobbits set out with renewed courage, their spirits bolstered by the kindness and wisdom of their enigmatic host. Chapter 8. Fog on the Barrow Downs. After bidding farewell to Tom Bombadil and Goldberry, the hobbits set out across the Barrow Downs, a region of ancient burial mounds and rolling hills shrouded in mist and mystery. Tom's parting words had warned them to avoid lingering too long in the area, but the hobbits feel a sense of optimism and security after their restful stay. As they traverse the grassy landscape, the morning sun warms their spirits, and they even take some time to enjoy the sights, temporarily forgetting the dangers that lie ahead. Frodo, however, remains cautious, uneasy about the growing fog that begins to roll in as they continue their journey. As the day progresses, the landscape changes subtly, becoming more foreboding. The hobbits lose their bearings in the thickening fog, which seems to distort the hills and mounds, leading them in circles. Frodo grows increasingly alarmed as the group begins to feel the oppressive atmosphere of the Barrow Downs closing in. The cheerful mood from earlier dissipates, replaced by an eerie silence that weighs heavily on them. They attempt to retrace their steps, but the fog seems to conspire against them, and they find themselves drawn toward a sinister barrow looming ahead. Exhausted and disoriented, they decide to rest briefly near the mound. The hobbits are soon overcome by a sudden, unnatural drowsiness. Frodo struggles to stay awake, but finds himself slipping into a deep sleep haunted by strange dreams. When he awakens, he finds himself lying inside a dark, cold chamber beneath the barrow. The air is thick with a chilling presence, and he realizes with horror that his companions Sam, Merry, and Pippin are lying motionless beside him, draped in eerie white garments as if prepared for burial. A shadowy, malevolent figure looms over them, chanting in an ancient tongue. Frodo feels an overwhelming sense of dread as the Barrow-wight, a spectral entity bound to the mound, prepares to claim them. Drawing on his courage, Frodo remembers the song of summoning that Tom Bombadil taught them. With trembling hands and a desperate heart, he sings the incantation, calling out for Tom's help. The Barrow-wight recoils as the song echoes through the chamber, and moments later Tom's powerful voice answers from outside. Bursting into the barrow, Tom banishes the wight with a commanding song, filling the chamber with light and driving the darkness away. He helps the hobbits out of the mound and into the fresh air, reviving Sam, Merry, and Pippin, who were entranced by the white spell. Tom retrieves ancient weapons from the barrel, a set of swords forged long ago to fight the servants of Sauron, and gives them to the hobbits, arming them for the challenges ahead. With Tom's guidance, they leave the Barrow Downs behind, shaken but grateful for his timely rescue, and continue their journey toward Bree. What do we notice? Why's the weapon? Because every time we turn around, they're attacking. And then, Chapter 9, At the Sign of the Prancing Pony. As the hobbits approach the village of Bree, they are struck by its unusual diversity compared to the Shire. Bree is a bustling hub where men and hobbits coexist, with travelers from distant lands occasionally passing through. The sight of larger folk and the lively activity in the streets makes Frodo and his companions feel both curious and cautious. They are acutely aware of their need for secrecy. Particularly after their encounters with the Black Riders, Frodo decides to use an alias to avoid drawing attention to his real identity. Despite their apprehension, they look forward to the relative safety of the inn, the Prancing Pony, which Gandalf had recommended. Upon entering the inn, the hobbits are greeted by the jovial but slightly flustered innkeeper, Barliman Butterbur. Barliman is warm and welcoming, but his scatterbrained nature leaves Frodo uneasy. The hobbits secure a private room and settle in, relieved to be among friendly faces for the first time since leaving the Shire. However, the common room of the inn is bustling with travelers, and Frodo decides they should mingle to avoid suspicion. The group joins the crowd, which includes a mix of locals and travelers, including a group of rowdy hobbits and a mysterious man sitting in the corner, cloaked and hooded. The man introduces himself as Strider, a ranger with a commanding presence and a watchful gaze. Frodo is wary of him, sensing both danger and potential trustworthiness in his demeanor. As the evening progresses, Frodo tries to maintain a low profile, but finds himself caught up in the lively atmosphere. Pippin, however, becomes less cautious, and begins telling tales of their journey, including hints about Frodo's connection to Bilbo. Alarmed, Frodo attempts to divert attention by singing a comical hobbit song, and even standing on a table to entertain the crowd. His performance is well received, but disaster strikes when he slips and falls, causing the ring to slip onto his finger. Frodo vanishes from sight, leaving the crowd in shock and confusion. Realizing his mistake, Frodo quickly removes the ring and reappears, pretending to have fallen under the table in embarrassment. While the crowd eventually dismisses the incident as a trick, Strider's intense gaze suggests he knows exactly what has happened. The Strider noticed he wasn't hurt or sad. However, he was indeed, and he's more than willing to go with the terms. After the commotion, Strider approaches Frodo and warns him about the dangers he faces. He reveals that he knows about the Black Riders and their pursuit of Frodo. Strider offers his assistance, claiming he can guide them safely on their journey, but his cryptic nature leaves Frodo uncertain of his true intentions. Back in their room, Frodo and his companions receive a message from Barliman, a letter from Gandalf. Left weeks earlier, the letter confirms that Strider is trustworthy and advises Frodo to seek his help. Strider, whose real name is revealed to be Aragorn, promises to protect the hobbits, urging them to leave Bree as soon as possible. With the Black Riders likely closing in, Frodo realizes they have no choice but to trust him. Chapter 10, Strider. After reading Gandalf's letter, Frodo is both relieved and alarmed. The wizard's absence now seems more troubling, but his assurance about Strider, or Aragorn, provides some comfort. Aragorn lays out his plan to guide the hobbits through the wilderness, avoiding main roads and potential ambushes by the Black Riders. His confidence and knowledge of the terrain impress the hobbits. His rugged demeanor and cryptic comments make Frodo cautious. So he's pretty bared to be confident, but when they arrive, bared and buggy, the journey makes it appropriate. Aragorn warns them that their enemies are relentless and may already be close. The group decides to leave Bree at first light, but the atmosphere of tension lingers as they prepare for the journey. That night, the hobbits sleep uneasily in their room at the Prancing Pony, feeling the weight of the danger around them. Strider stays awake, keeping watch and ensuring their safety. Frodo dreams of dark shapes and the sound of galloping hooves, reinforcing his fears. Meanwhile, unknown to the hobbits, Black Riders enter Bree, spreading fear among the townsfolk. They attack the inn stables and search for the hobbits, causing damage and panic in the quiet village. In the morning, the hobbits discover that their ponies have been let loose, likely to hinder their escape. Barliman Butterbur, ashamed for not preventing the incident, does his best to help by securing another pony for them. Aragorn leads the group out of Bree through a hidden path, avoiding the main gates where the riders might be waiting. He explains that their route will take them across the wilderness, through uncharted terrain that only he knows well. The hobbits quickly realize that Aragorn's skills as a ranger are unmatched. He seems to read the land like a book, finding paths and shelter where none seem visible. Aragorn pauses for a moment to tell everyone privately, "We must go upward." Despite his competence, Frodo remains uneasy about their situation, feeling the weight of the ring and the danger it attracts. Aragorn assures him that vigilance and speed are their best allies, and the hobbits begin to trust him more as the journey progresses. As they travel, Aragorn shares pieces of his past and his knowledge of Middle-earth, giving the hobbits a glimpse into the vast history and struggles of the world beyond the Shire. He tells them of the Black Riders, revealing that they are the Nazgul, former kings of men enslaved by Sauron's power through the Nine Rings. Their mission is to find and return the One Ring to their master. This revelation chills the hobbits, especially Frodo, who begins to feel the ring's growing influence over him. Aragorn's words deepen their understanding of the gravity of their quest, and the hobbits begin to see Aragorn not just as a guide, but as a protector and ally against the encroaching darkness. Chapter 11. A Knife in the Dark. As the group travels, under Aragorn's guidance, the atmosphere grows increasingly tense. The Nazgul, or ringwraiths, are relentless in their pursuit, and Aragorn pushes the hobbits to keep moving, often through rough and uncharted terrain. Frodo begins to feel the weight of the ring more acutely, sensing its pull and the dark power that seems to close in around them. At night, the hobbits huddle close to Aragorn as he keeps watch, his sharp eyes scanning the shadows for any sign of their pursuers. The world beyond the Shire feels increasingly perilous, and Frodo begins to truly understand the enormity of the journey he has undertaken. Meanwhile, back in the Shire, the Black Riders continue their hunt, interrogating anyone who might have information about Frodo and the ring. They leave behind a trail of fear and destruction, with rumors of their terrifying presence spreading far and wide. As Frodo reflects on this, he feels a deep sense of guilt for the danger that has come to the Shire and the friends who have joined him. Sam, however, remains steadfast, assuring Frodo that he is not alone in this burden. The angel at Poe, Aragorn urges them to put thoughts of homicide for now and focus on the road ahead. One night, as the group makes camp, Aragorn teaches the hobbits more about survival in the wild, showing them how to find shelter and conceal themselves from watchful eyes. His calm authority provides some comfort, but the hobbits are still haunted by the looming threat of the ringwraiths. As they rest, Frodo dreams of dark shapes and an overwhelming sense of dread, visions that seem to stem from the ring itself. Aragorn warns Frodo that the Nazgul are drawn to the ring and can sense its presence more acutely the closer they are. Frodo begins to feel the weight of the ring, not just physically but spiritually, as if it is trying to dominate his thoughts and will. The group's worst fears are realized when they are ambushed by the Nazgul on Weathertop, a hill where Aragorn had hoped they could find a momentary vantage point and rest. The attack is swift and terrifying, with the Black Riders emerging from the darkness like wraiths of nightmare. Frodo is overwhelmed by a sudden urge to put on the ring, despite Aragorn's warnings. In a moment of desperation, Frodo succumbs to the ring's power and slips it onto his finger. Instantly, the world changes. He sees the wraiths in their true spectral forms, terrifying and otherworldly. The Nazgul converge on him, and their leader, the Witch King, stabs Frodo with a Morgul blade. Aragorn fights them off with fire and drives them away, but Frodo is gravely injured. The group is left shaken and desperate as Aragorn tends to Frodo, warning the others that the wound is deeply evil and that they must hurry to Rivendell if Frodo is to survive. So I think that's kind of where, I don't know, I feel like once it's dark, Chapter 12, Collide to the Ford. After the attack on Weathertop, the group is in a state of panic and despair. Frodo's wound, inflicted by the Witch King's Morgul blade, is unlike any ordinary injury. The blade's cursed fragment remains lodged in Frodo's shoulder, slowly working its way toward his heart, and Aragorn knows that only Elrond, the elf lord of Rivendell, can heal him. The journey becomes a race against time as Frodo grows weaker with each passing hour. He has only the resources of his own group, Rhaena, Wad, and Idrun. Aragorn does his best to care for him, using his knowledge of herbs to treat the wound temporarily. He finds Athalas, a plant known for its healing properties, and uses it to ease Frodo's pain. but it cannot stop the curse's progression. The hobbits are deeply shaken by the attack, and the atmosphere grows heavier as they travel through increasingly wild and desolate terrain. Sam stays close to Frodo, his concern for his master evident in every word and action. Pippin and Merry, though frightened, begin to show a newfound determination, offering support in whatever way they can. Aragorn pushes the group to move quickly, often traveling late into the night and taking little rest. He warns them that the Nazgul are still pursuing them, likely regrouping for another attack. The tension is palpable as the group feels the constant shadow of their enemies closing in. As they near the ford of Bruinen, a crossing that leads into Rivendell's territory, their journey becomes even more perilous. The landscape grows harsher and Frodo's condition worsens. He begins to drift in and out of consciousness, plagued by visions of darkness and shadow. The ring's influence over him seems to grow stronger, and he feels the pull of Sauron's will more acutely. Aragorn carries Frodo when he is unable to walk, his urgency driving the group forward, despite their exhaustion. Along the way, they encounter Glorfindel, an elf sent by Elrond to find and assist them. Glorfindel's presence brings a sense of hope to the weary travelers, as his light and power seem to repel the growing darkness. Glorfindel places Frodo on his swift horse, Asfalith, and urges the group to press on. As they approach the ford, the Nazgul appear once more, this time in full force. The Black Riders converge on the group, their malice and intent palpable. Frodo, though weak and terrified, musters the last of his strength to resist the overwhelming urge to surrender to the ring's call. Asfalith, guided by Glorfindel's commands, races toward the ford with Frodo, narrowly avoiding the wraiths. Upon reaching the river, Frodo defies the Nazgul, declaring that they will not take him or the ring. The Witch King advances, but the river rises in a sudden and magical flood, sweeping the wraiths away. Frodo collapses as the effort to resist drains the last of his strength. The chapter ends with the group rushing Frodo toward Rivendell, their hope resting on Elrond's healing abilities and the safety of the Elves' Haven. Book Chapter 1 Many Meetings. Frodo awakens in the serene haven of Rivendell, relieved to find himself alive after the harrowing flight to the ford. Elrond, the Lord of Rivendell, has healed him, removing the fragment of the Morgul blade that threatened to turn him into a wraith. Though still weak, Frodo feels a sense of peace and safety within Rivendell's enchanted borders. Gandalf is by his side, explaining that he had been delayed while dealing with another danger, but arrived in time to assist. Frodo learns that it has been several days since the flood at the ford washed away the pursuing Nazgul, and he expresses his gratitude to all who ensured his survival. Once he has regained some strength, Frodo is reunited with his companions, who are overjoyed to see him awake. Sam, ever loyal, has rarely left his side, while Merry and Pippin share their excitement about Rivendell's beauty and the presence of elves. The hobbits marvel at their surroundings, from the stunning architecture to the melodic songs that seem to flow through the air. Frodo also meets Glorfindel again, the elf who helped save him, and is struck by the powerful and otherworldly presence of the elves. As they walk through the halls and gardens of Rivendell, Frodo begins to feel a deep appreciation for the rare opportunity to experience such a place, though the weight of the ring and his responsibility still looms in his mind. The most touching moment comes when Frodo reunites with Bilbo, who has been living in Rivendell since his departure from the Shire. Bilbo has aged significantly, appearing frail and tired now that the ring's influence no longer sustains him. The two share a heartfelt conversation, with Bilbo expressing guilt for passing the burden of the ring on to Frodo. Frodo reassures him, recognizing that Bilbo acted without full understanding of the ring's nature. They exchange stories about their respective journeys, and Bilbo offers Frodo a sense of comfort and familiarity amidst the strangeness of Rivendell. He also shows Frodo a completed version of his memoirs, titled There and Back Again, a record of his adventures. Frodo learns from Gandalf and Elrond that a council will soon be held to determine the fate of the ring. Elrond has summoned representatives from all corners of Middle-earth to Rivendell, seeking a united response to Sauron's growing power. Frodo realizes that his journey is only the beginning of a much larger and more perilous quest. Though he is overwhelmed by the enormity of the events unfolding around him, he feels a growing resolve to see his task through. The chapter concludes with Frodo reflecting on the strength he has drawn from his friends and the guidance of those wiser than himself, preparing him for the crucial decisions that lie ahead. Chapter 2 The Council of Elrond. The Council of Elrond gathers in a grand chamber in Rivendell, the air thick with tension and purpose. Frodo takes his seat among figures of great renown, feeling both small and overwhelmed by the magnitude of the meeting. Elrond begins by introducing the purpose of the council: to determine the fate of the One Ring and unite against the growing threat of Sauron. Those assembled include Legolas, an elf representing King Thranduil of Mirkwood; Gimli, a dwarf from Erebor sent by his father Glóin; Boromir, a man from Gondor; Aragorn, Frodo's guide and arranger; and several elves of Rivendell, along with Gandalf. The atmosphere is somber as Elrond recounts the ancient history of the ring, its creation by Sauron during the Second Age, and its role in the corruption of Middle-earth. As he says in the Mary at the end of the 9th century, taking things one step further, Elrond tells the tale of how Sauron deceived the free peoples by forging the One Ring in secret, binding it to the other rings of power. He describes the war that followed and the pivotal moment when Isildur, a king of men, cut the ring from Sauron's hand, defeating him. However, Isildur failed to destroy the ring, keeping it for himself. Elrond, who was present at the time, recalls how he urged Isildur to cast it into the fires of Mount Doom, but Isildur refused, claiming it as his own. The ring was later lost when Isildur was ambushed and killed, sinking into the Anduin River and fading from history until it was found by Gollum. Elrond's retelling sets the stage for Gandalf to explain how the ring came into Frodo's possession. Gandalf speaks of his discovery of the ring's true identity, recounting his journey to the archives of Gondor, where he found ancient scrolls confirming the inscription on the ring. He shares how he confirmed its power by casting it into the fire, revealing the words in the black speech of Mordor: "One ring to rule them all, one ring to find them, one ring to bring them all," and in the darkness Gandalf also reveals disturbing news. Saruman, the head of his order, has betrayed them. Saruman, consumed by the desire for power, has allied with Sauron, building his own army in Isengard and seeking the ring for himself. This revelation shocks the council, illustrating that even the most trusted allies can fall under the ring's corrupting influence. The council continues as Legolas reveals that Gollum, captured and imprisoned by the elves of Mirkwood, has escaped, likely aided by Sauron's forces. Boromir speaks of Gondor's struggle against the forces of Mordor, describing his prophetic dream that brought him to Rivendell. In this dream, he heard of Isildur's bane and the return of the sword that was broken. Aragorn, seated nearby, reveals himself as Isildur's heir and produces the shards of Narsil, the sword that cut the ring from Sauron's hand. Boromir, initially skeptical, grows silent as Aragorn's lineage becomes clear. Aragorn speaks of his duty to reclaim his throne in Gondor, but emphasizes that the ring must not be used, even as a weapon, against Sauron, as its power would corrupt anyone who wields it. Aragorn's mouth dropped open when Jrrr noticed the stone that was bundled up and the union to the Darkhold. The stone floor was paved in snow. After a lengthy debate, the council agrees that the ring cannot remain hidden or used. It must be destroyed, and the only way to do so is to cast it into the fires of Mount Doom, where it was forged. The enormity of the task leaves the room in silence until Frodo, despite his fear, offers to carry the ring. His quiet but resolute declaration astonishes the council, and Elrond praises his courage. The Gaysayers say Eristus cannot give up this ring. Full disclosure, this is also the Slime ring. Elrond declares that Frodo will not go alone, and a fellowship will be formed to aid him on his journey. The chapter closes with a growing sense of unity among the council, but also an unspoken acknowledgement of the immense peril that lies ahead, as they prepare to face the shadow of Mordor together. Chapter 3. The Ring Goes South. In the days following the Council of Elrond, preparations begin for the journey to Mordor. Frodo, now the official ring-bearer, feels the weight of his responsibility more acutely with each passing moment. The Fellowship is carefully chosen to balance strength, wisdom, and unity among the free peoples of Middle-earth. It includes Aragorn, Gandalf, Legolas, Gimli, Boromir, and Frodo's loyal companions, Sam, Merry, and Pippin. Elrond advises that the Fellowship must consist of only 9 members to counter the 9 Nazgûl. As the Fellowship forms, Elrond provides guidance, warning that their mission will test their resolve and unity at every step. Aragorn and the elves reforge Narsil, Isildur's ancient blade, into Andúril, the Flame of the West, as a symbol of his lineage and destiny. The sword shines with renewed brilliance, a reminder of Aragorn's responsibility as the heir of Gondor. Meanwhile, Frodo receives a gift from Bilbo, a mithril coat, a lightweight but nearly impenetrable armor, along with Sting, an elven blade that glows in the presence of orcs. Bilbo's parting gifts carry deep emotional weight as he entrusts Frodo with tools for protection. The Fellowship gathers supplies and studies the maps provided by Elrond, planning their journey south. Their route will take them over mountains, through wilderness, and eventually into the heart of Sauron's domain. The Fellowship sets out from Rivendell in the chill of winter, heading south through the misty mountains. The departure is somber, with the elves singing songs of farewell as they leave the sanctuary of Rivendell behind. Aragorn leads the group, relying on his knowledge of the land, while Gandalf offers guidance and morale. As they travel, the Fellowship begins to bond, though the differences between its members become apparent. Boromir expresses doubts about their mission, particularly about the plan to destroy the ring instead of using it as a weapon against Sauron. Gimli and Legolas, representing the historically estranged races of dwarves and elves, struggle to trust one another, though Gandalf mediates their disputes. The journey grows more perilous as they ascend into the mountains, where snow and bitter winds hinder their progress. The Fellowship attempts to cross the Redhorn Gate, a high pass through the misty mountains, but their path is blocked by a fierce blizzard. The snow becomes nearly impassable, and the Fellowship begins to despair. During the struggle, they sense a malevolent force watching them, and Gandalf suspects that the mountain itself is resisting them, perhaps influenced by the will of Sauron. After a harrowing discussion, they decide to abandon the mountain pass and take a more dangerous route through the mines of Moria, an ancient dwarven kingdom that has fallen into ruin. The chapter ends with a growing sense of dread, as the Fellowship prepares to venture into the dark and uncertain depths of Moria. Chapter 4. A Journey in the Dark. The Fellowship begins their approach to the mines of Moria, a vast underground kingdom of the dwarves that has long been abandoned. Gandalf leads the way, recounting the ancient history of Moria, once a flourishing realm known as Khazad-dûm. It was famed for its wealth, particularly mithril, a precious metal more valuable than gold. However, greed led the dwarves to dig too deeply, awakening a shadow of great terror that drove them from their halls. Frodo listens intently, growing uneasy about the choice to enter such a dangerous place, but he trusts Gandalf's guidance. The Fellowship descends into the rocky terrain surrounding the gates of Moria, the environment cold and foreboding. When they reach the entrance to the mines, they find it sealed by enormous stone doors. The doors are decorated with glowing Elvish inscriptions, which Gandalf translates as, "Speak, friend, and enter." The phrase puzzles them, as it suggests a riddle. Gandalf tries various incantations to open the door, but fails repeatedly, growing frustrated. The Fellowship rests uneasily by a dark lake near the entrance, as Gandalf continues his attempts. The stillness of the lake, unnaturally quiet, unnerves the group, particularly Frodo, who senses something lurking beneath its surface. Sam, ever loyal, stays close to Frodo, trying to reassure him even as the air grows heavier with tension. Finally, Gandalf solves the riddle. The word friend in Elvish, melon, is the key to opening the door. The gates swing open, revealing the dark and silent interior of Moria. Before they can enter, however, the lake erupts as a monstrous creature known as the Watcher in the Water emerges, attacking the Fellowship with its long, slimy tentacles. The creature grabs Frodo, nearly dragging him into the lake, but Aragorn and Boromir leap to his defense, hacking at the tentacles until the Watcher retreats. The Fellowship flees into the mines as the Watcher causes the entrance to collapse, sealing them inside and cutting off any possibility of retreat. The darkness of Moria envelops them completely, forcing Gandalf to light the way with his staff. The air is thick with the weight of centuries, and the vast halls echo with their footsteps. The Fellowship feels a deep unease, knowing they are in a place of death and shadow. Frodo, who is increasingly attuned to the presence of the ring's power, senses an ominous presence in the dark, as though they are being watched. Gimli is both awestruck and sorrowful, speaking reverently of the dwarves who once inhabited the Great Kingdom. Gandalf warns them to remain silent and vigilant, as the dangers of Moria are not confined to its history. The chapter ends with the Fellowship pressing deeper into the labyrinthine tunnels, their path uncertain and their fear growing with every step. Chapter 5. The Bridge of Khazad-dûm. The Fellowship ventures deeper into the mines of Moria, navigating a labyrinth of dark tunnels and vast, crumbling halls. Gandalf leads the way, his staff glowing faintly to illuminate their path, but even he is cautious in these unfamiliar depths. Gimli is filled with awe and sorrow as they pass through the remnants of Khazad-dûm's former glory. Great pillars stretch into the darkness, and shattered carvings speak of a kingdom that once rivaled the splendor of any in Middle-earth. However, the oppressive silence and lingering sense of dread remind them of the danger that lurks in these ruins. As they journey on, they come across a chamber filled with broken remains, an ancient battle site where dwarves fought to defend Moria. Gimli is overcome with grief when they discover Balin's tomb, the resting place of the dwarven lord who attempted to reclaim Moria years ago. Gandalf reads the inscriptions on the tomb and examines an ancient book known as the Book of Mazarbul, which records the final days of Balin's expedition. The entries describe how the dwarves were gradually overwhelmed by orcs and other dark creatures, culminating in their tragic end. The Fellowship is deeply shaken by this discovery, knowing they are not alone in the mines. Their fears are soon realized when Pippin, curious and careless, accidentally drops a stone into a deep well. The sound echoes ominously through the tunnels, and soon after they hear the distant pounding of drums. Doom! 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 Gandalf quickly leads them out of the chamber, but it is too late. The sound has alerted the orcs that still inhabit Moria. The Fellowship is pursued relentlessly, forced to flee through a maze of tunnels as the drums grow louder. Frodo feels the ring's weight intensify, sensing the malice of the enemies that hunt them. They encounter waves of orcs, fighting fiercely as they make their way toward the only exit, the Bridge of Khazad-dûm. As they reach the vast chamber leading to the bridge, they are confronted by a monstrous cave troll and a horde of orcs. The Fellowship fights valiantly, with Aragorn and Boromir defending Frodo and the hobbits, while Legolas and Gimli strike with deadly precision. Frodo is nearly impaled by the troll's spear, but is saved by his mithril coat, which absorbs the blow. The Fellowship manages to fend off the attackers, but the relief is short-lived as a new terror emerges. From the depths of the mines comes a Balrog, a demon of fire and shadow. Awakened by the dwarves' greed long ago, the Balrog's presence is overwhelming, radiating power and malice that even Aragorn and Gandalf fear. The Fellowship sprints across the narrow bridge of Khazad-dûm, a perilous crossing suspended over a seemingly bottomless chasm. Gandalf stays behind to confront the Balrog, ordering the others to flee. With his staff and sword, he challenges the demon, uttering the iconic words, "You shall not pass." Gandalf strikes the bridge with his staff, causing it to collapse and sending the Balrog plummeting into the abyss. And then the Balrog clumps right after he unimaginably. However, as the Balrog falls, its whip of fire lashes out and ensnares Gandalf, dragging him down as well. The Fellowship watches in horror as Gandalf disappears into the darkness, his final cry echoing in their ears. Devastated but forced to press on, the Fellowship flees the mines, emerging into the daylight of Dimrod Dale, their hearts heavy with grief, and their journey forever changed. Chapter 6. Lothlorien. The Fellowship emerges from the darkness of Moria into the light of Dimrod Dale, their spirits shattered by the loss of Gandalf. The fresh air and sunlight are a relief after the oppressive gloom of the mines, but their grief is palpable. Aragorn assumes leadership, urging the group to press on despite their sorrow. He leads them away from the gates of Moria, fearing that orcs may still pursue them. Aragorn soon raises his voice and says, "Prepare to be immortal by death." Frodo, still reeling from the ordeal, struggles to comprehend Gandalf's sacrifice, while Sam remains close to him, offering silent support. Gimli too is deeply affected, as Moria represented both his heritage and the site of great tragedy. As they descend toward the valley, Aragorn allows the group a brief rest near the Mirror, a tranquil lake revered by the dwarves. Gimli recites an ancient dwarvish verse honoring the memory of Durin, the founder of Khazad-dûm, and draws strength from the sacred waters. The Fellowship takes solace in the beauty of the natural world, though the shadow of their loss lingers. Aragorn warns them that their journey is far from over. Their next destination is Lothlorien, a hidden elven realm where they may find refuge. He explains that the Golden Wood, as it is called, is protected by the power of Lady Galadriel and Lord Celeborn. The group enters Lothlorien with a mix of trepidation and wonder. The forest is unlike any they have seen, filled with immense malorn trees whose golden leaves shimmer in the light. The air is serene yet charged with an otherworldly presence, as though the forest itself is alive and aware of their presence. Legolas is visibly moved by the beauty of his kin's land, while Gimli remains cautious, wary of elves due to the historic tensions between the races. Their arrival does not go unnoticed. A group of elven guards intercepts them, led by Haldir. Though the elves are wary of outsiders, Aragorn vouches for the fellowship, and they are allowed to enter under strict watch. In the heart of the forest, the fellowship is brought before Galadriel and Celeborn, the wise and regal rulers of Lothlorien. Galadriel's presence is awe-inspiring, her beauty and grace exuding both power and compassion. She speaks to each member of the fellowship, offering words that touch on their deepest fears and hopes. Frodo, in particular, feels the weight of her gaze, as though she can see directly into his soul. Galadriel acknowledges the heavy burden he carries and reassures him that he is not alone. She also warns of the trials yet to come, subtly testing the resolve of the fellowship. The group is given rest and hospitality, but the shadow of their quest and Gandalf's absence looms large. The chapter ends with the fellowship finding a moment of respite in the timeless beauty of Lothlorien, though they know it is but a brief pause in their perilous journey. Chapter 7. The Mirror of Galgralth. The fellowship spends several days in the tranquil sanctuary of Lothlorien, slowly recovering from the ordeal in Moria and their grief over Gandalf's loss. The Golden Wood, as it is called, seems to exist outside the constraints of time, with its golden-leaved malorn trees and serene atmosphere offering a sense of calm and renewal. Frodo finds some solace in the forest's quiet beauty, though the weight of the ring remains ever present. Sam marvels at the elves' craftsmanship and gardens, while Merry and Pippin begin to regain their cheer, exploring the peaceful land under the watchful eyes of their hosts. Gimli, despite his initial wariness of the elves, starts to appreciate the majesty of Lothlorien, particularly after witnessing the respect Aragorn commands among their hosts. One evening, Galadriel and Celeborn invite the fellowship to a private audience in Caras Galadon, the city built high in the trees. The elven rulers express their sorrow at Gandalf's fall and their admiration for the fellowship's courage. Galadriel's words are both comforting and unnerving, as her piercing gaze seems to uncover the unspoken fears and doubts of each member. She speaks of the growing shadow in Middle-earth, warning that Sauron's power is spreading and that even the stronghold of Lothlorien is not immune. Her voice carries a mix of hope and foreboding, and the fellowship is reminded of the enormity of their task. Frodo, in particular, feels the intensity of Galadriel's presence, as though she understands the burden of the ring better than anyone else. Later that night, Galadriel invites Frodo and Sam to a secluded glade where she reveals a mysterious artifact, the Mirror of Galadriel, a silver basin filled with water that can show visions of the past, present, and future. She offers them the chance to look into the mirror, warning that what they see may be unclear or troubling. Sam hesitates but eventually agrees, and in the mirror he sees a vision of the Shire under threat, its fields burned, trees cut down, and its people oppressed. The skin of light still appears as Milas shows, asking questions like half years later from what he saw, even a wolf track. Later, in the overwhelmed, Sam expresses a deep longing to return home and protect the Shire, but Galadriel gently reminds him that their mission is to ensure that such visions do not come to pass. When Frodo looks into the mirror, he sees fragmented and troubling images. The Eye of Sauron, wreathed in flame, searching for him, the Fellowship in peril, and a great ship departing into the west. The visions leave Frodo shaken, and he becomes acutely aware of the ring's pull as Sauron's eye seems to fixate on him. Galadriel comforts him, acknowledging the immense weight he carries, and revealing her own struggle with the ring's temptation. Spot on. She tells Frodo that the ring has the power to corrupt even the strongest of hearts, and she demonstrates this by testing herself. For a moment, she allows the temptation of the ring to surface, imagining herself as a powerful and terrible queen. But she ultimately resists, choosing to remain herself. Her choice reassures Frodo, giving him hope that the ring's power can be. As the night deepens, Galadriel provides Frodo with a glimpse of her own wisdom and foresight. She speaks of the Fellowship's potential to shape the fate of Middle-earth, emphasizing that their choices will have far-reaching consequences. Though her words are cryptic, they leave Frodo with a renewed sense of purpose. The chapter ends with Frodo and Sam returning to their companions, their hearts heavy with the knowledge of what lies ahead, but strengthened by the counsel and guidance of Galadriel. The mirror's visions linger in their minds, a reminder of the stakes of their mission and the sacrifices it may demand. Chapter 8. Farewell to Lorien. As the Fellowship prepares to leave Lothlorien, their hearts are heavy with both gratitude and sorrow. The Golden Wood has provided them with a sanctuary unlike any other, a place of beauty and peace that seems untouched by the growing darkness in Middle-earth. Yet they know they cannot linger. Galadriel and Celeborn call them together for a final farewell, offering gifts to aid them in their journey. The Fellowship gathers in the city of Caras Galadon, where the elves provide provisions, including Limba's bread, a sustaining food that will serve them well on the road ahead. Before their departure, Galadriel bestows individual gifts upon each member of the Fellowship. Aragorn receives a sheath for Andúril and the Elfstone, a green jewel set in a brooch, symbolizing his lineage and the hope he represents. Legolas is given a bow crafted by the elves of Lothlorien, strung with hair from Galadriel herself, which is both beautiful and deadly. Gimli, hesitant to ask for a gift, humbly requests a single strand of Galadriel's golden hair, which he grants with grace, a gesture that forges a bond between dwarf and elf. Sam is given a box of earth from Lorien's gardens, along with the seed of a malern tree, a gift that holds the promise of renewal and growth. Merry and Pippin receive finely wrought silver belts, each adorned with intricate designs. Frodo, as the ring-bearer, is given a light that will guide him in the darkest of places, the Fial of Galadriel, a small crystal vial containing the light of Eärendil's star. Galadriel's words to Frodo are filled with solemnity and hope, as she reminds him that even in the shadow of despair, light can still endure. She gazes at him with a deep understanding of the burden he carries, and her relationship with Galadriel. She gazes at him with a deep understanding of the burden he carries, and Frodo feels both humbled and strengthened by her presence. The gifts signify not just physical aid, but also the wisdom and blessings of the elves, who place their trust in the Fellowship to stand against the darkness. The Fellowship departs Lothlorien by river, traveling in boats provided by the elves. They glide along the Anduin, the great river that cuts through Middle-earth, with the hauntingly beautiful voices of the elves singing farewells from the shores. The journey down the river is calm at first, allowing the Fellowship to reflect on all they have experienced and what lies ahead. Frodo is struck by a deep longing to remain in Lothlorien, but the call of his quest drives him onward. Sam, too, shares his wistful thoughts about the beauty of the Golden Wood, vowing to preserve its memory in his heart. As the river carries them farther from Lothlorien, the land begins to change, growing wilder and less hospitable. The Fellowship remains alert, knowing that enemies could strike at any moment. Aragorn grows more introspective, aware of the difficult choices they will soon face. The chapter ends with the Fellowship reaching a critical juncture in their journey, the shadow of Mordor growing closer with each mile. The memory of Lothlorien lingers, a brief and shining moment of respite before the trials yet to come. Chapter 9. The Great River. The Fellowship continues their journey down the Anduin River, their small elven boats gliding swiftly through the calm waters. The landscape begins to change as they move southward, transitioning from the golden beauty of Lothlorien to wilder, more untamed lands. The once serene and safe atmosphere gives way to a sense of foreboding. The river narrows in places, hemmed in by steep cliffs and dense forests, creating an ominous setting that keeps the Fellowship on edge. Aragorn leads the group with steady determination, though his demeanor is increasingly thoughtful, as he knows difficult choices lie ahead. The Anduin's calm surface masks the growing tension among the Fellowship. The group begins to feel the strain of their quest, with each member grappling with internal fears and uncertainties. Frodo, burdened by the ring, becomes more withdrawn, sensing its growing influence on his thoughts. Boromir, in particular, struggles openly, voicing his concerns about the plan to destroy the ring. He questions Aragorn's leadership and suggests that the ring could be used to defend Gondor against Sauron. His veiled mistrust of Aragorn and growing fixation on the ring create an undercurrent of discord that threatens the unity of the Fellowship. Their unease is heightened when they sense that they are being watched. At night, Frodo notices a strange, slinking figure following their boats from a distance. Aragorn confirms Frodo's suspicions, identifying the creature as Gollum. Having once possessed the ring, Gollum is now obsessed with reclaiming it, and has been tracking the Fellowship since Moria. The Fellowship debates how to deal with him, but Aragorn advises against confrontation for now, as Gollum remains elusive and difficult to capture. Frodo feels both pity and fear for the creature, recognizing in Gollum a possible reflection of his own future should he succumb to the ring's power. As they approach the Falls of Rauros, the Fellowship encounters one of the most awe-inspiring sights of their journey. The Argonath, the Pillars of the Kings. These towering statues, carved into the cliffs on either side of the river, depict ancient kings of Gondor, their stern faces turned toward the south in silent vigilance. The sight fills Frodo and the others with a mixture of wonder and reverence, a reminder of the noble heritage of men and the enduring struggle against darkness. Aragorn is particularly moved, feeling the weight of his lineage as the rightful heir to Gondor. However, the Fellowship's admiration is tempered by the knowledge that they are nearing the borders of Mordor, where their unity and resolve will be tested. The chapter ends with the Fellowship preparing to make camp near the falls, knowing that their next decision will determine the course of their journey and the fate of Middle-earth. Chapter 10. The Breaking of the Fellowship. The Fellowship camps near the Falls of Rauros, their journey at a critical juncture. Aragorn must decide the next course of action, whether to proceed directly to Mordor or head to Minas Tirith to aid Gondor in its struggle against Sauron's forces. The weight of leadership presses heavily on him, as the Fellowship looks to him for guidance. Frodo, burdened by the ring and the enormity of the task before him, feels increasingly isolated. He knows the Fellowship's presence is a comfort, but the growing influence of the ring whispers that its power could corrupt even his friends. Boromir, already showing signs of being drawn to the ring, confronts Frodo during a private moment. He tries to persuade Frodo to bring the ring to Gondor, arguing that it could be used as a weapon to defeat Sauron. Frodo, sensing Boromir's desperation, refuses, knowing the ring's corrupting influence would only bring ruin. Boromir's frustration turns to anger, and he attempts to seize the ring by force. Frodo escapes by putting on the ring, vanishing from sight and fleeing into the forest. Boromir, realizing the gravity of his actions, is left ashamed and sorrowful, but the damage to the Fellowship's trust is done. As Frodo wanders alone, the ring's power intensifies, showing him visions of Sauron's eyes searching for him. He wrestles with the decision of whether to remain with the Fellowship or continue alone to protect his friends from the ring's influence. Ultimately, he resolves to bear the burden alone, understanding that the others, no matter how loyal, cannot fully shield themselves from the ring's temptation. Frodo removes the ring and returns to visibility, making his way toward the river with the intent to leave the Fellowship behind. Meanwhile, Sam realizes Frodo's intentions and pursues him, refusing to let Frodo go alone. Despite Frodo's protests, Sam's unwavering loyalty and love for his master win out. Together, they take one of the boats and set off across the river, heading toward Mordor. Frodo is deeply moved by Sam's determination, and their bond strengthens as they prepare to face the dark road ahead. Back at the camp, Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli search for Frodo, while Boromir, filled with regret, fights to defend Merry and Pippin from an orc ambush. The hobbits are captured by the orcs, who plan to take them to Isengard under orders from Saruman. Boromir is gravely wounded while protecting them, using his last strength to sound his horn and summon help. Aragorn arrives too late to save him, but promises to honor his sacrifice. Rota, as the Fellowship scatters, Frodo and Sam heading toward Mordor, Merry and Pippin captured, and Aragorn, Legolas, and Gimli pursuing the orcs, the Fellowship is broken. Yet their resolve remains, as each member embarks on their path to stand against the growing shadow. The book ends with Frodo and Sam looking toward the dark lands of Mordor, knowing that their journey is far from over, but resolved to see it through together.